So I just want to introduce myself. I've heard from all of you across the world. Like I said, it feels like we're doing a UN delegates. I'm Grace Martens. I'm from South Africa, if you're wondering where my accent is like a love child between England and Australia. I have a Bachelor of Arts in International Relations, and I myself taught in South Korea in 2016. So it's been a little while now, but it was one of the most life-changing experiences that I've ever had. And I have a passion for giving people the opportunity to do the same. So that's why I work at TravelBud. So for today's webinar, we're basically going to look at teaching abroad in general. I then want to introduce you to our company in particular, and then what we offer as a company, as well as program information, as well as questions at the end. So that's when we can all fire off again. Okie dokie. So teaching abroad in general, I like to call it meaningful travel. It's wonderful if you've had the opportunity to travel and perhaps you've gone on holiday somewhere, you've done an exchange of some description, but I think it's really notable the way that you can go somewhere for 2 weeks and you can cram as much as humanly possible into your itinerary, but it will always pale in comparison to going somewhere and having the opportunity to actually live there and immerse yourself deeply into that culture. So however you got here, if you've done a TEFL course already, if you're waiting to do one or thinking about doing one, whatever the case may be, it's wonderful that you are looking at this opportunity. And it's a very unique world teaching English abroad. It does give you the opportunity, like I said, to immerse yourself in very unique and intricate cultures. You make an impact and you have a purpose. A lot of people have started to question over this last period of time with COVID and that kind of thing, just like, what are we doing here and how can we actually make an impact in the world that we live in? And teaching English abroad, every country that's on offer and that needs English have a different need for it. And it's wonderful to be able to be part of the community to really fulfill that. A big draw as well to teaching English abroad in general is that you do get to earn a salary and to save money. Different countries have different opportunities in terms of saving potential, but all of them allow you the opportunity to really live in that country, and you don't have to make another income somewhere. This is what you do, and you can live there for an extended period of time. Travel is a huge one as well, really ticking all the right boxes, and travel is a big one for a lot of people. The opportunity to see not only the country that you'll go and teach in and all the different elements of each different province or place that you go to, but also it's often nestled in a nice hub of other places around it that you get to travel to for very cheap, or in a way that you wouldn't necessarily be able to just hop over from South Korea to Japan for the weekend, you know what I mean? And then a big one is personal growth as well. I think all of us are looking to grow and change, and it's a wonderful opportunity to really do that and to really get to know yourself and change your perspective on the world. And then a big one as well is professional growth and networking. You never know who you might meet that leads you to a next opportunity while you are abroad. There's a huge amount of expats that are in country, and it's a very welcoming environment. So you often get to meet weird and wonderful people, and the professional growth that comes from it is really, a lot of people are concerned that maybe I don't have teaching experience, or I didn't study teaching, I'm something completely different, but that's okay. You can bring the skills that you have and you can apply them to teaching, but in turn teaching will also give you the opportunity to really have some transferable skills, no matter what it is that you'd like to do one day or after teaching abroad. Even if this isn't necessarily a long-term plan, it's something you'd like to do for a shorter period of time, the skills that you learn, like time management and business etiquette and working with diverse groups of people and colleagues and students, it'll give you the opportunity to put that into practice, whatever it is that you end up doing afterwards. So that's teaching English abroad. The company that we work for in particular, TravelBud, is working with Premier TEFL in a partnership. So I'm speaking quite specifically to those that already have a TEFL or that are looking at enrolling in a TEFL. But TravelBud is a company that was started in 2012. We have our founder who went to Thailand as part of a world tour, and he really saw the need and the fact that he could integrate into the community, and the fact that there is room to have a very well-established program to kind of bridge that gap. The team that works at TravelBud, we're all quite a weird and wonderful bunch. We're well-traveled and very dynamic and excitable about all things travel. And the big thing about us that sets us apart is that all of us in our team have actually taught abroad before through the TravelBud program. So we really can give you firsthand insight. We'll obviously give you a full rundown of everything from a professional standpoint. We know the ins and outs of getting all the documents and those kinds of things. But more than that, you really do have the bud of TravelBud that we'll be your friend to hold your hand in terms of getting you ready and really walking you through what can be quite a complicated process. So in a nutshell, basically, we are a company that has curated a program. It's more than just getting a job. You know what I mean? Once you get to the country, you have a job, that's great. But there's so much more that goes into making a successful, experience out of teaching English abroad. It's really about orientating yourself to the culture. It's really about, having someone to call if something goes wrong. It's a whole lots of different elements beyond just the job. We do the job. We guarantee the job placement, but it is something that, is a lot of other things. So we offer pre-departure support, what to get, where to get it, how to get it, double check it once you do have it in terms of documentation. It's become even more of a difficult, complicated process now during COVID. We've had to adapt to a lot of changes, and we have the ability to do that so that you don't have to. If you're months and months down the line of collecting your documents and all of a sudden the Thai government's like, oh, no, sorry, now you need a certificate of entry, we'll know how to do that so that you don't have to. So we offer the full pre-departure support from the very important documents, but also things like what to pack. Like I said, we've all done this. And then a culturally immersive orientation. It is something that we want to provide the opportunity to really understand the culture that you're going to be living and working in. It can be a bit overwhelming when you do get there and it's not the culture that you're used to. So in this sense, the immersive orientation, we offer history lessons, politics classes, we do cultural excursions that are relevant, we do cooking classes and martial arts and all manner of really interesting things that'll keep you interested and entertained and learning the skill of all the ins and outs of the culture. And then very importantly, we do guaranteed job placements as well. So with guaranteed job placements, once you've been accepted onto the program after applying, we're saying with 100% certainty that we can place you in one of our partner schools that have been vetted and selected against a very strict criteria. With jobs abroad, sometimes it can be a little bit of a mixed bag, just in terms of the quality of schools that you do have. You do hear these horror stories about going abroad and the world was promised, and it can be a bit of a dicey situation. And I just want you all to know that that will absolutely never happen with TravelBud. We select and vet our schools against very strict criteria, and we have worked with them for many, many years. And then the other thing that we do offer is 24/7 in-country support. We don't just receive you in country and then send you off into the abyss and say, good luck, Godspeed. It is something that while you are in the country that you're going to be living and working in, we still offer the 24/7 in-country support. That does come in the form of having a dedicated team on the ground that's made up of both ex-foreign teachers as well as local staff as well for translations and just knowing how things work, so that there's a whole team that's always there to support you. It is something that we check up with you regularly to see how you're doing. You will have the orientation, you'll make friends during that orientation and have your support network of teachers. But it's also about giving you the opportunity to, meet other teachers further down the line. We'll have meetups, that maybe some of the people weren't on your specific orientation. You can meet people that came before you, people that arrived after you, and just be part of that community as well. But very importantly as well, it is quite a scary thought to know that you're going to go halfway across the world and then perhaps, something happens and you think, well, what am I going to do? I know nothing about this country and how things work. And for instances like that, we do have our 24/7 helpline that you can phone at any time, and we'll have someone to assist you with that. Then very interesting as well, we have something called the lifetime placement guarantee, which I really believe sets us apart from a lot of other places. The lifetime placement guarantee is basically where once you're a TravelBud alumni and you've completed a contract with one of our schools, you can then transfer to any of our other partner schools. So say, for example, you teach in Japan for a year and you love teaching and you'd like to maybe move to a different school in Japan and you'd like to, teach in a different part, then you can of course transfer between schools in the same country, but you can also transfer internationally to some of the other schools as well. So you can do that as many times as you'd like to. You could, do a year in Japan, travel for a year, go back home, whatever. And if you ever want to come back and teach in like Thailand or go back to Japan, then you can go ahead and do that as well. So that's the TravelBud family for you. So we do have 6 programs on offer with TravelBud. We do have the Japan program, the South Korea program, the Vietnam program, Thailand, as well as Myanmar, which is postponed at the moment, of course, due to the very upsetting things that are happening there at the moment. So yeah, these are basically the options that we have. The 3 that I'm going to discuss today are going to be Japan, Vietnam, and Thailand. These are more geared to those that already have a TEFL certification. So I'm going to go through those. Costa Rica is another option that we do have, but unfortunately, that does require you to do the TESOL course in country as well. But if you don't have a TESOL course, then you can always slot into that, and that is an option for non-degree holders. So let's kick off with Thailand. So if we look at Thailand, Thailand is a country that really has an interesting cultural background. They call it the land of smiles, and for a very good reason. It's probably one of the most friendly and genuine places that you can come across. There are usually 34 million tourists that visit Thailand every year, and it's not hard to see why. And sometimes you ask yourself, why would you work 350 days of the year just so that, you know, you can go and sit in Thailand for 15 of them? Well, once you realize that you can actually live in a place like Thailand, it changes the game. And this is an opportunity to do that through teaching English. It's very important because they have such a huge amount of people that are, you know, based in the hospitality and tourism industry that really floats the economy. It's very important for them to be able to speak English as a universal sort of language with tourists coming through the doors. So even though, you know, you might have young students and that kind of thing, you can always know that you're making an impact that has far further reach beyond just your semester or your year that you teach in Thailand. That's going to carry them over for the rest of their lives, essentially. So it's a really important thing that you'll be doing there, and you really feel that sense of purpose, and they welcome you into that community with open arms. They have a collectivist culture, and you can really see that in the way that they treat you, the way that they treat education. That collectivist culture, as opposed to sort of the Western countries, individualist nature is really easy to spot wherever you go. You know, it's an incredible thing. So I'm going to share this presentation with Megan to share with all of you afterwards. And I just want you to pop down. If you click on that link, it'll take you to a YouTube video that also explains our cultural orientation for Thailand, just to give you more of a visual introduction to what we do there. So if we have a look at the type of schools that we work with in Thailand, we predominantly work with public schools that we place in. There are some other sort of private schools that are not uncommon, but for the most part, they are public schools, which is quite nice in a sense, because then you know that you have a very structured work week. So it's Monday to Friday, you get to school at about 7:30 and you're out of there by 4, and you'll often see the foreigners will go and have a Chang beer together and watch the sunset and do all those kinds of things. So it's a very nice work-life balance that you do have in Thailand. Male teachers do usually get placed in a high school, and female teachers are usually placed in primary schools, but that's up for negotiation. If you're somebody that has a real passion for working with older students and you're a female teacher, then we can always place you in a high school. It really just depends on what's available and what your experience is and what your preferences are. We'll always try and accommodate those as far as possible. So the salary for Thailand is around $1,000 to $1,200 US a month, which, if you're from the West, doesn't sound like a whole lot of money. But remember, in Thailand, the living expenses are extremely, extremely low, and you'll get really used to that. And it's something that the $1,000 to $1,200 range really comes from location above anywhere else. So with location in smaller towns and medium-sized cities, you'll often find that the living expenses are much, much lower. Whereas in bigger cities like Bangkok, you might get paid sort of the $1,200 US per month in Thai baht equivalent, but that would be something that's you know, the living expenses are a lot higher. So just to put it into perspective of how much they can differ, in Bangkok, you can expect to pay sort of like $200 to $250 equivalent in rent, whereas in a smaller town, you can pay about $90, so under $100. So counterintuitively, sometimes you can actually save more money by living in a smaller town, even though you get paid less because the living expenses are that much lower. But ultimately, Thailand is not the place I would say go to save buckets and buckets of money. It's really about the experience, although you will make more than enough to, you know, live off a very comfortable lifestyle. One of our coordinators, Brooke, she's from the US and she's taught in Thailand, and she was a teacher in the US and then she went over to Thailand, and she said that she loved that Thailand is the only place where you can get an iced coffee every day on a teacher's salary. So there you go. Thailand has two major holidays that separate their semesters. One that happens now this just happened now throughout the month of April, where they celebrate their Thai New Year. And then one throughout the month of October, starting with their new term starting on the 1st of November. So you just have to sort of keep this in mind when you think about your timeline. Of course, if you are looking at the Travel Bud program and enrolling, we'll advise on timelines. But for example, coming sort of in July or August might not be the best time, because you'll just arrive, you'll start teaching, and then as soon as you're kind of like a month in, it's going to be a month-long holiday right off the bat there. So we always advise sort of waiting, if you can, until the start of a semester, but we do have running start dates throughout the year that we can always accommodate teachers. And then, yeah, so some of those things, like I mentioned, the low living expenses is a big draw for people. So you usually spend on average about $600 for, food, transport, entertainment, all those kinds of things. And then you do have very long holidays, which is lovely. So you'll have holidays throughout the month of April and October, and you can travel all around Thailand to those beautiful islands and everywhere else that you see. There is a bustling expat community as well. You always have other people in your town. Some people are very nervous about being like the only person in the whole of, their town in Thailand, all alone without speaking a word of English, that kind of thing. But please don't be worried about that. In Thailand, there are always other foreign teachers at your school, and there's usually, lots of other foreigners in the vicinity as well. So we've spoken about some of those things. So the eligibility requirements, generally you are required a passport from one of what we consider the 7 native English speaking countries. Sometimes there's a little bit of flexibility there. They've become very strict on holding a bachelor's degree in Thailand. For a long time, it was okay to kind of go over on a tourist visa and then change that to a different kind of visa, do a sort of volunteer visa. But since the King of Thailand died and the military's kind of taken over that side of things, they do a lot of spot checks and those sorts of things. So for our company, it's not that it doesn't get done. It's just that for Travel Bud, it's too much of a risk, to send all of you over there, or to send somebody over there and without a degree, and then they risk, being deported or something like that, because they do check in schools. So yeah, just some small things, just basically, good physical and mental health. It can be demanding being a teacher. I think we all know that. We've seen it, we've experienced it, some of you. So, just standing in front of a classroom in very hot conditions, just be ready for that. And then clean criminal record. This is something that if it's something minor and not particularly to do with like children or anything too serious, there are some ways around that, but that's more specific. And then you do need a TESL or TEFL course, which we do offer, but you can get that through Premier TEFL, and that would be accepted. So the placement program with Travel Bud, we do offer other options where you could essentially, do it in Thailand with us. You could do our online TEFL course, but you can also, of course, do an independent TEFL, like Premier TEFL, which is internationally accredited and at least 120 hours. And we definitely accept that. And then you can do the placement program. So this is basically all the bells and whistles of the program, where you have all the pre-departure support, you arrive in country, you do 1 week of orientation. During the week of orientation in Thailand, you'll be doing things, like I said, language lessons. Once you've learned the language, some basics of the language, you're also going to be sent into a market to find certain things and barter with local people and get the ingredients for a cooking class. Then we have a lovely old lady named Ma, and she's going to teach you how to make some of the most delicious Thai meals. Very authentic. You'll be spoiled for the rest of your life to ever get one from any other country except Thailand. But it's absolutely an incredible experience. And the food is a very good lens into a culture as well. Often the way that you eat, the sharing of food, why certain ingredients are popular. There's a lot to be said about the history of food and how that weaves into the culture. So we teach you a little bit about that as well. And then we also do an excursion to a temple. You'll sit down with a Buddhist monk and he'll explain some of the origins and philosophies of Buddhism, and particularly to be mindful and sensitive of that as somebody that's a teacher, which might be completely different to your home country. If you're from a Western country, bopping a kid on the head and saying like, good job, buddy, it's perfectly normal, perfectly acceptable, actually encouraging and cute. But in certain countries, with Buddhism, the head is a sacred space. You don't touch that. So it's not difficult to understand or to implement, but it is something that is needs to be explained, so we'll take great care to explain that. We have very qualified people to do that have a lot of history with Thailand. They've studied doctorates and these kinds of things. So they're going to walk you through that. But it's also, the first week is also there to help you mingle with the other teachers as well. So we have a welcome beach barbecue. This takes place in a city called Hua Hin, which is about 2.5 hours outside of Bangkok. So you arrive in Bangkok, we'll pick you up, we'll take you to Hua Hin. You do the week of orientation with everybody, have fun, meet everyone, and then off you go to your placement and start your contract, which can be a semester long, which is about 4.5 to 5 months, or it can be a full year contract. That's absolutely fine. If you'd like to start with a shorter contract and then extend, that's okay as well. We can do that. It does sometimes depend on how close you're coming to a holiday, but of course our coordinators will explain that more specifically once you get in touch with them. And then, yeah, basically, obviously the neon pink elephant in every single room is COVID. So I just want you to know that Thailand is one of the options that's very open at the moment. We've sent over 200 teachers since last September when they just opened up after the very hard lockdown. So it has been successful. We've got a lot of backup plans and we've managed to get teachers in no matter what they throw at us. And they want to open quickly. They want to stay open because they're missing out on like a bunch of tourists that usually would like have a huge economic impact on them. So the demand for teachers is still very, very high. And we have been able to adapt to the pre-placement process that's now required to Thailand, where essentially you get your contract and your flights and everything booked before you go. And then you get a certificate of entry and everything sorted before you go. So for right now, they sometimes there are a few tourist visas and non-immigrant B visas and O visas, but we're sending our teachers over on the work visa straight off the bat. So you get there you go. There is still a mandatory quarantine period that's in place in Thailand right now. So this is good to take note of. There have been some very positive reports that they're going to shorten the amount of days required. So it was 14 days for anyone arriving in Thailand in very specific hotels in Bangkok. And then from there, you do your orientation and then you go to your placement after that. But it is something that they are looking at shortening it to 7 days for those that have been vaccinated, or 10 days for everybody else. So that's on the horizon. And then the quarantine's not as bad as you think. You basically arrive, you get picked up from the airport, you go to the quarantine hotel, and then you don't like stay in one room for the whole entire time. You do have the opportunity to, you stay in your room for like 2 or 3 days. They do a COVID test. And then from there, you basically are allowed to go to the pool and go to the gym. You can't leave the hotel, but they have some strict policies within the hotel, but you're not cooped up in your little room. We actually had some of our teachers do a blog post for us, just explaining like what they found and how the food was and just some stuff there. So I've also included that link there that you can have a look at. There is a cost associated with that quarantine. It depends how many days would be required by the time that you go. So for the full 14 days, it's about $1,000 to $1,500 for the full 10 days. For the full 14 days, if it drops, then we're talking about like 500 to 700 for the first bit. So it seems like a lot, but it is a small price to pay for a whole year in a different country in a time that's very difficult to travel. Okie dokie. Then when it comes to the next option that I'm going to chat to you about, this is going to be Vietnam. So Vietnam is a phenomenal place to teach. It honestly is. Again, it also has that very warm and friendly Southeast Asian culture that, if you stay in a place long enough, people will like you eventually and they'll get used to you. But with this, they just welcome you with open arms. A lot of people ask me if there's any kind of like anti-American sentiment because of, the whole Vietnam War and that kind of thing. Absolutely not. They're extremely welcoming and just absolutely lovely all the way through. One of the biggest benefits of Vietnam is that they do have a huge difference between the amount that you earn as an English teacher and the amount that you need to live off. So your living expenses are pretty much the same, if not less, than Thailand. So around about 600 for food, transport, entertainment, accommodation, all that kind of thing. But the amount that you earn is about $1,200 to $2,000. So it's an incredible opportunity to save money in Vietnam because your work life, because your expenses versus your salary is so huge, which obviously gives you money to travel and do other fun things that you want to do. It also has a very good work-life balance. So when we talk about that, a permanent contract in Vietnam with our partner schools is 80 hours a month. Okay, so that's 20 hours a week, and that's 4 hours a day, more or less. Some days you might work a little bit longer, but then you'll have other days for a 5-day week, and you'll always get 2 days off. So it's really lovely in the sense that, you know, you're willing to work hard. You have to be as an English teacher, but at the same time, you don't want to spend every day, 7 days a week, you know, working, and then you're too tired to go out and like see the place that you've now come to live in. So Vietnam's really great for that. You also sort of take the form of a lecturer almost, where you only have to be in the classroom for the time that you have class. So if you have a class at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon and your next class is only at 6 p.m., then that gap in between, you can go and drink a really strong Vietnamese coffee or eat some delicious food, do what you want to do, but see the places, write a blog, I don't know, do what you want to do. But yeah, it's a really good work-life balance there. You also get 2 weeks of paid vacation if you go for a year contract. And then there are also contract length options. Normally it's 4 months, 6 months, or 12 months. But with Vietnam at the moment, there's a ton of paperwork that now has to happen from the school side before they come over. And they often front your quarantine costs and that kind of thing. So it's too much of an investment for them to make for teachers that are only going to stay for a little bit. They do want a longer commitment from teachers at the moment because of that, heightened thing from their side. So it's fair enough, but just take note of that. And then there are opportunities for career growth. This is quite unusual. In places like Thailand and, like South Korea, you can work there for like 10 years and maybe you'll, get more salary and you'll get more vacation if you've been a teacher there for a long time, but you'll never become the principal of the school. That's just not how it's set up. But in Vietnam, the management is often foreign, so you can move up really quickly. So this is great if you're looking for career change or you work in education and you want to kind of do what you do here, but move up in a different place. Vietnam's great for that. You can work there for like 6 months as a regular teacher, learn the ropes, and then from there you can always go to the head teacher. From there you can move into management of the school, curriculum development. A lot of the time they'll give you an allowance of some, amount in US dollars to say like study something or do a course that's beneficial for both of us, which is great. You also have a lot of choice in placement. When it comes to some other destinations, it really does require a lot of flexibility. But with Vietnam, there's a lot of say that goes into it from your side about what your number one thing is. If you'd like to make the most money possible, if you'd like to, be in a very specific area, we can hit like your top thing most of the time. So Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City, usually those are very good options, and we can guarantee positions in those places. If you're looking at like Da Nang and Hoi An and some of the really like cool places in between, a lot of the time that's reserved for people that have already worked in Vietnam for a year, because the schools have a wider choice of people that have tons of experience. So it's quite rare for a first-time teacher to be in those more touristy areas, but Ho Chi Minh and Hanoi and sometimes little coastal towns in between. It has a bustling expat community as well with Vietnam. It's really something that, in South Korea, when I taught in South Korea, it was English teachers as foreigners and the US military. And that was pretty much it. But in Vietnam, you've got your like digital nomads that live and work in Vietnam because it's so cheap, so beautiful. They can work for a UK or US based company, but get to work in a place like Vietnam. But you also have vloggers and bloggers and artists and business people and all kinds of people in Vietnam. So it's a very, very fun environment to live in. And then your orientation is loads of fun as well. I see I spelled that wrong. That's my bad. Okay, so with Vietnam, you can work in public schools, but it's very rare, especially during COVID. We can revisit that if you're looking at going like late 2022. But for now, we can talk about the private language centers, which is predominantly where we place. So the private language centers, they are very fancy. Let me start by saying that. They're like 9 stories high, and they've got like air conditioning and a room that's full of props and colored paper and everything you could ever want to just be the dream teacher that you imagine yourself to be. So it's really lovely in that sense. So it's lots of smart boards, lots of opportunity there. And you do get a lot of benefits as well. There is, like I said, the 2 weeks accrued leave. A big thing for private schools as well is that often you'll work in one branch of a school that has a lot of branches. That means that you have the opportunity to make extra money as well. So when you get to your school in Vietnam, you usually do about 2 weeks of training. So they're going to teach you the content and methodologies that are very specific to Vietnam and that school. So with that, they might, as a parent might send their kid to like a school that's specific to like being able to speak English more than anything else or something like that. They always touch on everything, but basically that. And then, with the training and that kind of thing, you really get the opportunity to just like understand the methodologies and then be prepared. But at the same time, if something comes up, if a teacher from another branch of the same school phones in sick or they're going on their 2 weeks of leave, there's a system that comes up where basically all of their spots that are available for their classes that are going to need to be filled come up, and you can elect to cover those classes and obviously get paid for that as well. And they'd rather have teachers from another branch trained in the same methodologies come and take over this other branch. Even though you work at different branches, you still work for the same school. So it's quite nice in that sense. And then of course you get paid loads extra there because you can take on extra work. You can also do business English, is quite popular in some of the bigger cities like Ho Chi Minh. But yeah, tons of opportunity to make extra money. You don't have that very strict kind of hold on your contract where you can't do extra work. So a great option there. So yeah, again, with eligibility requirements, it's usually the 7 native English speaking countries. This one is one where if you are a non-native speaker, or a non-native passport holder from not out of the 7, then you can apply and we can look at your education. So if you've been schooled in English or something like that, there is room to play in Vietnam. Bachelor's degrees are very important in Vietnam. You can't get the legal working permit unless you have a bachelor's degree. So you can't work legally if you don't have one. And there are lots of risks that come with working illegally in Vietnam. I'm not going to go into that because that won't happen with travel budge. And then also, again, must be in good physical health and then clean criminal background check. And that's pretty much everything for Vietnam. So yeah, pretty much the same here. I'm not going to go through too much. I think we are running out of time and I can't speak any faster than I'm speaking, otherwise we'll have a riot. So yeah, that's pretty much it. 2 weeks of you arrive in Ho Chi Minh. So there are a couple of things I just want to alert you to for COVID related. So teachers have gone over to Vietnam now. It was under an unbelievable lockdown for pretty much the whole of last year. So our first teachers have only gone over this year. They did a phenomenal job. They had 0 related deaths. I don't think they got as much praise as they should have for that kind of thing. But obviously they had a very strict lockdown and that affected everything. So with this, there have been a couple changes here. Essentially, there is also a mandatory 2-week quarantine that's priced similarly to Thailand, where it's 1,000 to 1,500 for 14 days. In all the cases so far, the teachers that have gone over have had their schools cover that. But it's not always the case. So we do say budget for that in case. And then another change that's come about is that 1-year contract versus the shorter contracts that were normally allowed for Vietnam. And then another thing that's happened is anyone that's under 25 years old, so born 1994 and older, younger, if you're born after 1994, then you have to enter into Hanoi, because in Ho Chi Minh they've got a new rule where it says that you're not an expert if you are coming into Vietnam at that age on a work permit. So anyways, we found a loophole. You enter into Hanoi, you'll quarantine there, then you'll fly down to us in Ho Chi Minh, do your week of orientation where you visit the Coochie tunnels, the War Museum, you do your cooking classes and your martial arts and all those fun things, meet the other teachers, and then off you go to do your 2 weeks of training, followed then by your year contract. And South Africans, this is a very niche thing, but South Africans, we now need a proficiency certificate to work in Hanoi, but we can just place you in Ho Chi Minh, so we'll just leave that off now. Okay, how much time do we have left? My God. Okay, teach English in Japan. Japan has honestly been the most sought after country in the world to teach English in. People lose their mind for Japan, and for good reason. It's absolutely incredible. It does have something for everybody. So if you like fashion, it's there for you. If you like nature, you got it. If you like food, then this is the one. You know, Japan really does have something for everyone, and it is quite rare. Japan is sort of like this elusive place that a lot of people want to teach English in, but it hasn't been available for a long time, and the opportunities that are available are real difficult to get into. So TravelBud is very proud to have this as one of our newer programs, but to offer the same type of setup that we have with our other countries in a place like Japan, which is traditionally very difficult to teach in. So the schools that we work with both public and private schools. They are called the Kaiwa schools, are the private schools, and they're basically like private institutions that people can enroll themselves into. So you do have quite a lot of adult learners that want to just improve their English. And then you also do have some younger students as well. So you have a real range, which is really fun to work with. Just when the little ones are very cute, but they have very short attention spans, then you can switch over to the adults or the teenagers. And when they not the ones anymore, you can switch back to the little ones. So it's very nice. They tiny classes as well. 10 to 15 students per class in Japan. So you really have the opportunity as well to really get to know every single one of them individually and just make friends in that sense and really like connect with your students. We do also work with the public schools. So that means that you'll be what they call an ALT teacher, which is an assistant language teacher. So you will not be the main or the head teacher or sort of like the lead teacher. If you work in the public schools, that will be a Japanese teacher and you'll assist. With the Kaiwa schools, you will be the one that plans the lessons, delivers the lessons, marks the exams, does everything. But the ALT teacher, you do have an important role that you do, but you won't be the lead teacher. And then there are about 30 to 40 kids in, in the classes. This is in the public schools. So obviously the ages are capped according to what grade you're teaching at that time. So with that, I'll explain about COVID and public schools and that kind of stuff now, actually. So salary-wise, it's about 1,900 to 2,300. So I know that you think like, ding, 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 ding. Okay, we're hitting the twos now. That's great. Listen, you make good money in Japan, but also remember that Japan is very expensive. So I wouldn't feel right telling you that like you make tons of money and you have tons of money to save. It is a place that you make a lot of money, but you spend a lot of money too, because Japan is just one of those places that are quite expensive. And then, but you will save about like $400 a month is quite realistic. Sometimes up to like 700 if you're real frugal with your money, but let's just call it that. And then they do give you like a transport reimbursement. That's also quite a nice perk of the Japan schools. So again, eligibility requirements, passport holders from 7 native English-speaking countries, good physical and mental health. They don't really have any medical issues. It's just they're really concerned about TB. We specifically have to ask if you have a history of that or anything like that, but that's very minor. They are very strict on having a clean criminal background check. Unfortunately, there's no room to maneuver there. They're very, very strict there. And the other thing is tattoos and piercings. So in your school, you will have to always cover any tattoos and piercings generally when you teach English abroad. But in Japan, this can be something that can work against you, unfortunately, if you have tattoos in any visible place or a large amount of tattoos, just because they do have a strong association with the Yakuza, which is the Japanese mafia. So it's just a cultural thing there. But other than that, it's pretty much, fine. This is under the age of 35 for Japan, but there's sometimes room for growth there. So again, same thing with the placement program. If you already have your TEFL certification, you'll do a 40-hour online orientation before you go, and then there will be meetups in country, but it's not going to be like the solid week like you have in the other countries. It's just a little bit difficult there to do that. But yeah, once you arrive in country, you basically go to your placement. You have 2 weeks of paid training, so that's really nice. 2 weeks of paid training, then you have your first month of official teaching, and then you get 1.5 times salary, but you do have to float yourself until you get the final your first salary. And then the visa process can be a little bit complicated, but that's obviously for us to do and not for you to worry about too much. That's what we do here. So COVID, they were unfortunately one of the countries that were the most affected by COVID and the pandemic. They open up, then they're closed again. And there are rumors that they're going to open up a lot more once the Olympics is over. That's been something that obviously they want to keep everybody safe with that international arrivals coming in. They had no spectators. Imagine getting to the top of your sport in the Olympic level and then not have any spectators. It's terrible, but there you go. That's the world we live in. So yeah, basically they're not letting lots and lots of people in and teachers and that kind of stuff for various visas until the Olympics are over. So we'll just have to monitor that situation. But essentially, the first start date for Japan is only going to be, you can enroll now and get started, which I would encourage, but you can only really go to Japan sort of March, April 2022. Whereas a lot of our schools used to be Kaiwa schools, the private schools. The Japanese government is really, they have to give like a written consent for you to come over if you want to get the visa. And there has to be a really good argument as to why they need to let people into the country. So from the public school side of things, they've said like, we haven't had native English speakers be able to come in for the last like year and a bit. Therefore, the education is suffering. Therefore, Japan is suffering. Therefore, this is a good enough reason. The Kaiwa schools are run like a business, basically. They're private schools, privately owned. So for them to kind of like say that, it's never going to happen. So that's why we're pushing a lot of our teachers to public schools for the March, April intake 2022. Could be sooner, but that a lot of things would have to go right before we can do that. So yeah, that's pretty much everything. When it comes to sort of teaching abroad with the Travel Bud program in particular, you can submit your inquiry on the website. We'll send you some initial information. You'll get a call from one of our coordinators. They'll chat to you about the best fit for you and your timeline and those kinds of things. Then you submit the formal applications, just a couple of extra questions. You do some basic documents, and then you book a consultation, which is where you'll speak to one of our coordinators for a full half an hour. We'll go through everything with you, and then you enroll officially into the program once you've been accepted. Okay, and then basically when it comes to the placement process, once you're enrolled into the program, two things will happen immediately. The first thing that's going to happen is that the support team will reach out to you. So they're going to get started on everything to do with before you leave your home country and arrive in your destination. So this is going to be the documents and the visas and the packing and the flights and the travel insurance, that kind of thing. And then the second thing that happens is you work with the placement team. So this is that mixed group of people that are in the country themselves that work with the placement side of things. So you're going to chat to them, talk about your preferences, talk about those kinds of things. So that out of the many schools that we do have, you can actually, start chatting. They can narrow it down for you specifically. Then you get everything ready. Off you go. Cultural orientation happens. And then you also have your 24/7 support, as well as the lifetime placement. Once you're in the Travel Bud family, you are in. Okie dokie. So Megan, I'm not sure how much time we have left, but that is pretty much everything from my side. We can go to questions now. And then in the last page of the thing that Megan's going to send you, whoever wants it, you can just click on some of these links to see things, or you could email me directly, grace@travelbud.com.